One question everybody asks, one of my viewers in particular, is another Philippine culture that they say needs to be abolished in the Philippines. And that has something to do with stealing of properties from relatives, land grabbing, that is. That's what we'll talk about. Stay with me. One viewer said, I agree with you, Grandpa, regarding your comments regarding handouts and so forth and so on, but could you talk a little bit, give us your opinion on this land grabbing situation in the Philippines, especially among relatives? So I did a little bit of research, but before we start, or before we get to that, let's talk about, let me show you what this viewer told me. This came from Jerry La Chica. By the way, thank you very much. That was a very good suggestion because I was caught by surprise myself. Dear Grandpa, I totally agree that handouts are unacceptable. I'm hoping you can also give your opinion on another cultural issue that should be removed from the Philippines: stealing property among relatives. I am Filipino-American, born and raised in the USA, and both my Filipino parents worked diligently as physicians since the 50s and eventually became naturalized US citizens. Having their own livelihood in the US and having become far separated from their relatives in the Philippines, could you believe siblings of my parents on both sides of the family had a sense of entitlement and sold inherited properties in the Philippines belonging to my parents and behind their backs? This involved deception, specifically forging of signatures to transfer title of land ownership in a corrupt environment. I was surprised to hear from some other Filipino Americans that their families experienced the same thing with relatives. I had an experience on this myself, so I know it exists and it's fairly popular, but I can give you a percentage of how frequent this is happening in the Philippines, but it is happening more frequently probably than you would think so, or I would think so. So I did a little bit of research and said, why is this thing happening? Why are people just going ahead and doing this thing? Maybe it's because of the illiteracy rate, lack of education in the Philippines. Maybe. So I said, let me look into that. World Data Atlas from the Philippine Topic Education Literacy Philippines, it says Philippine adult literacy rate was at a level of 96.3% in 2019, down from 98% 2015. It's high, very high. So I said, what is literacy rate? Adult, so this is 15 and higher in age, and literacy rate is of course computed. Total is percentage of the population age 15 and above who can with understanding read and write a short simple statement on their everyday life. Generally, literacy also encompasses numeracy, the ability to make simple arithmetic calculations. So it's very high. And because of this, I said, well, that is not the reason why this thing is happening. What could it be? The next one I researched sort of shocked me because I did not know about this. It says, strange laws you never knew existed. Family members who commit theft are not criminally liable. Again, not criminally liable. This is as of December 15th of December of 2015. So I don't know if it has changed since then. My guess is no, it hasn't, but I don't know. Filipinos are known for being family-oriented, and this dominant quality is probably one of the reasons a law that exempts family who commits theft, swindling, and malicious mischief from criminal liability exist. While it is dead giveaway that Filipinos value their family more than anyone or anything else, can this law be a good reason to promote solidarity in spite of criminal liability of a loved one? Under Article 332 of Revised Penal Code, no criminal liability but only criminal liability shall result from, but only civil liability shall result from the commission of a crime of theft, swindling, or malicious mischief committed or caused mutually by the following persons. So they cannot be held criminally liable, but they could be held civilly liable. And civil liability may simply mean return the property back to whoever actually owns it, and maybe some monetary compensation for damages, but you will have to prove damage, of course. And these are the covered individuals: spouses, ascendants, and descendants, or relatives of affinity in the same line. So ascendants going up, parents; descendants meaning children or grandchildren. The widowed spouse with respect to the property which belongs to the deceased spouse before the same shall have passed into the possession of another, and brothers and sisters and brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law if living together. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so don't ask me, oh gee, I got divorced with my spouse and he's no longer married, we are separated, blah, blah, blah. What are my rights? I have no idea. Suffice to say, based on what I read, that immediate family relationship or immediate family, including spouses and brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law, if living together, is called the family, subject to this law. The exemption established by this article shall not be applicable to strangers participating in the commission of the crime. However, there still exist some exemptions to the rule. A family will not be criminally liable for the aforementioned crimes, but a person will still be subject to civil liability, as I mentioned earlier. A complex crime will also be treated as one and will be subject to a single criminal prosecution. The exception only applies to a complex crime and not a crime of simple estafa. As mentioned under Article 332, the law only applies to the felonies of theft, malicious mischief, and swindling. However, if crimes that are included in Article 332 are perpetuated with another crime such as estafa, extortion will not be applied. A person still has a criminal liability regardless of relationship to the offended party. The provision's coverage is only for estafa, simple theft, and malicious mischief. This means complex crimes are not covered by such provision. In one case involving the accused who did not only commit simple estafa established through falsification of public documents, the offense's real nature was identified by the facts presented. As a result, the accused was not given the ability to avail himself of the absolutory cause that is only provided under the exempting law. The law still brings confusion when it comes to exception, and if promoting solidarity and harmony is the only reason to deter the offended party from pursuing criminal charges, then it is no longer surprising this law has been considered strange and absurd. Strange and absurd. If it's true that it's strange and absurd, why not remove it? And I'm not saying that it has not been removed. It's still there. Okay, probably. The problem is when such law exists, especially for so many years, people get used to it. So people just go ahead and forge documents and say, oh, I'll just sign this for you. It's okay. It is not okay. In fact, 50 years ago, before I left the Philippines, I had some documents notarized. And I went to the city hall and there were lots of lawyers whose job is to be a notary. Just went ahead and notarized the document, did not even ask for my identification to make sure that the person actually signing the document is me. That's strange, right? Yeah, in the United States, you will have to show documents, prove who you are, 2 documents, usually driver's license, a passport, and then they go ahead and let you sign it. So it's tough here in the United States. Also, in the US, children, in fact minor children, can sue their parents. Look at the case of the actress or the singer Brittany. she sued her parents. But here, when it comes to the, let's not talk about what is a simple stuff and what the nature of the crime or whatnot. But here, you can sue your parent for anything. But in the Philippines, there's some law that protects parents or relatives from being sued, at least criminally. They may still be liable for civil, but that is probably the reason. I concluded that that is probably the reason. Now, I also believe that although the literacy rate is high, when you're talking about this law, and some people may not even be aware of it, but the fact is they know that, oh yeah, I can just go ahead and sign this paper here. Oh, I can just go ahead and sell it for you. Oh, I can just transfer the title to you. It becomes like a habit. And then couple that with people, although considered literate, does not really have the higher education background to understand contracts, how important contracts is. In fact, some of them are reluctant to sign or ask for a contract because, oh gee, they're going to say I don't trust him and things like that. That could still be, in terms of literacy rate, that could still be a factor. But this is a strange law. I never knew that such law existed. So how could you protect yourself? Well, be sure everything is in writing. You're gonna lend money. If you're expecting to collect it, put it in writing. Everything in writing. Signed by you. Notarized. Have your wills prepared, signed, and documented so that people are not trying to grab properties after your death. And it's time for Philippines to become a little bit modernized when it comes to this. Now, US goes in a little bit of extreme, for example, allowing children to sue their parents. I don't agree with that either, unless it's a very serious situation. For example, child abuse or spousal abuse, things like that, you should be able to sue. But this is a strange law. Strange law. I never heard of this until now. So I appreciate the viewer who suggested that I look into this, and that is probably one of the reasons. And I thought I'll share that with you because it shocked me when I saw it. I said, whoa, there is such a law, huh? Again, I don't know if it still exists today or if it has been eliminated. My guess is it still exists. And secondly, don't ask me about detailed questions because I don't know. What is considered a serious offense or a non-serious offense that falls under the exemption rule and so forth and so on. I don't know. Check with your lawyer. All I know is there are some foreigners, for example, who are worried they're going to buy a property and they're afraid that the relatives might steal the property in the event of wife's death or something like that. What am I going to do? Consult with a lawyer and get your ducks in a row. Get papers prepared to the extent necessary to protect your interest. And that's all I can say about this. And if this is the practice in the Philippines, so be it. But be careful because this can happen to you. Thank you so much. Please do share this with others. I'll appreciate it if you click like and if you do subscribe to my channel unless you have already done so. Make it a great day and God bless.